Welcome to Zen Buddhism, where gentle guidance leads you into stillness. This practice invites release, a tender path to ease. Tonight, we soften the weight of karmic bonds in love, breathing with care to heal the heart. No effort is needed, only presence and openness. Serenity waits within you, ready to unfold. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and let this journey carry you like a quiet stream into rest and healing peace. Now, let's begin. The journey begins. The story of two travelers and the restless river. The morning opened in silence, wrapped in a veil of mist that softened every tree and stone along the riverbank. At the edge of the wide and restless water, two travelers arrived from different roads. They did not know each other in this present life. Yet in the stillness, something invisible tied them close, like two threads knotted before memory, like two echoes returning to the same sound. Their eyes met without words, and in that gentle meeting, the river seemed to whisper of old debts carried across time. Burdens once left unfinished now rising again, not as punishment, but as invitation. Before them stretched the river, endless and alive, its waves carrying the rhythm of life in the modern world, crowded with tasks, bills, the raising of children, and the constant demand to be strong when all one wishes is to rest. There was no path to turn back. The crossing had already chosen them, and in that certainty, they stepped forward together. The water moved with power and swirled around their legs like a living force. Each surge tested their balance, and each stumble brought frustration. When one slipped, the other pulled, yet the pull was not tender. It was sharp, filled with blame. The voice rose above the current, tired and accusing, so familiar to the countless quarrels that echo in kitchens and bedrooms across the world. When two share a house, but not the same heart. Every wave mirrored the arguments about money spent or money saved, about hours at work and hours lost at home, about dishes left undone or silence left too long. Every drop of water seemed to carry a fragment of memory, debts of anger and disappointment once buried in the soil of other lives, now rising again, sprouting into arguments that felt too heavy for the moment, yet carried the weight of centuries. As the river deepened, so too did their struggle. Their feet pressed against the stones below, yet slipped again and again. Their arms held tightly, yet their hearts pulled apart. The man complained of her weakness, and she answered with sharp words about his pride. They did not realize that each complaint was only a reflection of the other, that the mirror of karma shows not the faults of the partner, but the shadows we refuse to face within. Still, they moved forward, stumbling, hurting, yet never letting go completely, because some truth beyond their understanding kept them bound, like a reminder etched into the current that the crossing was not for one alone, but for both. For the river would not let them pass in separation. The mist hung heavy, and in that mist there was a whisper, soft, like an ancient teaching. It spoke not in words, but in the rhythm of water against stone. It said that today's struggles are not accidents, that they are not punishments. They are lessons returning, the fruit of seeds once planted. They rise so that they may be understood. They appear so that they may be released. The quarrels are not the enemy. They are the path. Each moment of anger is also a chance for awakening. Each surge of water is also a chance to soften, to see, to let go. And so the travelers continued, weary, yet unwilling to surrender, step by step across the restless surface, their journey slow and uncertain, yet undeniable, written long ago in the web of karma, and now walked with flesh and bone, a story unfolding in the simple act of two souls trying to cross together. When we look deeply into the journey of the two travelers, we begin to see that the river is not only water and stone, but the living current of karma itself. Every quarrel between husband and wife is rarely about the surface matter. It is rarely just about bills unpaid or words left unspoken. Beneath the surface lies the weight of unseen causes, some planted yesterday, some planted lifetimes ago. The truth of Zen Buddhism teaches that nothing arises without a seed, no anger bursts forth without a root, and no meeting happens by chance. The two who walk together have been bound by invisible debts, by the echo of actions once done, now carried into the present as an invitation to awaken. In daily life, this truth shows itself in countless quiet moments. A husband grows angry when his wife forgets something small, yet the anger feels larger than the moment, like a wave greater than its cause. Or a wife feels sorrow when her partner spends too long at work, yet the sorrow seems older than the absence. These emotions carry echoes. They are not only about now, they are the sound of unfinished lessons. In Buddhist thought, we call this karma, the natural law of cause and effect. What we send out returns. What we avoid will meet us again. And so when two people join in marriage, their union is more than love. It is also the field where past causes ripen into present experiences. Ignorance clouds this view. When partners forget the deeper truth, they fall into blame. The husband points to the wife. The wife points to the husband. Each sees the other as the source of pain. Yet in Zen, we learn that the mirror reflects only what is already within. Anger points to anger inside. Impatience points to impatience inside. The conflict is not punishment from the outside, but a reminder from within. The river of karma flows to cleanse what has not yet been understood, but ignorance resists, and resistance makes the current harder. The mistake most couples make is to turn against each other instead of turning toward the lesson. Some avoid the struggle by silence, by walls built high. Others fight with words like stones thrown across the water. Both choices keep the knot of karma tight. Silence breeds distance. Shouting breeds bitterness. Neither brings peace. The path of Zen invites another way, the way of awareness, to pause in the very moment of anger, to breathe in, and to see the root instead of the surface. When one feels the fire rising and chooses not to throw it outward, but to observe it within, transformation begins. The knot loosens. Compassion enters. This awareness does not erase conflict at once. It does not turn the river calm in a single step. Yet it changes the relationship with the current. Instead of drowning in the waves, one begins to float. Instead of blaming the other one, begins to see the shared lesson. Husband and wife begin to realize they are not enemies, but companions on a karmic path. They begin to hold each other not as burdens, but as teachers. And in this shift, the quarrel itself becomes sacred. It becomes the fire that melts ignorance into wisdom, the struggle that ripens into love. The same river that once seemed cruel becomes the teacher, carrying them not into despair, but into awakening. As the journey continued, there came a time when the two travelers grew weary of each other's voices. Their quarrels had become heavy, and each began to believe that the other was the true burden. In pride and in sorrow, they decided to part, each thinking that perhaps the river would be easier alone. The man stepped into the current with stiff determination, convinced that his strength could carry him across. The woman followed in quiet resolve, convinced that her patience and endurance would be enough. Yet the river cared little for pride or patience. It welcomed neither. Its waters swelled around them with equal force, pulling them back with indifference. The lesson of shared karma cannot be avoided. The man pushed forward with all his might, muscles straining, yet each step forward was swept away by the tide. His breath grew shallow, his body heavy. He realized that strength without support is fragile. The woman clutched at drifting branches and stones, her eyes filled with quiet struggle. Each moment, she thought she had found a way the water pulled her back. Patience alone was not enough. The river revealed the futility of separation. Like two partners who believe they can ignore the bond of marriage by retreating into their own worlds, working overtime to avoid intimacy, hiding in silence to avoid conflict. Each believes they are carrying less, but in truth, each is carrying more. Exhaustion soon wrapped around them. The man clung to a rock, midstream, trembling with fatigue. The woman floated aimlessly near the shore, holding to a fragile branch. Both were isolated. Both were too far to help each other. The river roared between them, a voice without words saying that no one escapes the lesson alone. The current of karma demands facing it together, for debts cannot be dissolved in isolation. They are meant to be met, shared, and transformed through connection. In their failure, humility grew. Their pride softened into understanding. The man realized that his strength was never enough without her balance. The woman realized that her patience was never enough without his courage. Together, they began to see that what each lacked was precisely what the other carried. Only in union could they find completion. The mist above the river seemed to lift, showing them clearly that the crossing was not about winning or surviving alone. It was about walking side by side, learning the lesson of compassion and interdependence. With slow and cautious steps, they returned to each other. Their hands reached out, not with anger, but with quiet acceptance. This time, the grip was softer, steadier, born not from blame, but from the recognition of shared destiny. Their quarrels did not vanish, but their hearts opened a little more. They began to see each other as mirrors, as companions, as teachers placed on the same path by karma. And in that shift, the river no longer seemed cruel. It became a sacred guide, leading them not into despair, but into deeper understanding, into the possibility of love ripened by wisdom, into the beginning of peace. The quarrels of the two travelers rose and fell like the restless waves of the river until one quiet moment arrived. In the midst of exhaustion, one of them felt a subtle pull at the wrist, and for the first time they noticed the thread, a fine and invisible strand binding them together. It shimmered in the mist with a light that seemed both familiar and eternal. And in that vision, the heart softened, for they understood at last that the struggle was not against each other, but against the weight of forgotten debts. This awakening was gentle yet profound. The quarrels that seemed endless revealed their true nature. They were not random bursts of anger. They were echoes of unfinished stories, like debts carried from one life into another. Every harsh word, every sigh of disappointment was the repayment of old wounds. And instead of asking, "Why me?" the traveler now asked, "What is the lesson here?" The answer whispered through the current. Each conflict is an opportunity to release what has been carried too long. Each tear is a chance to wash away what no longer belongs. With this realization, the blame began to fade, not all at once, but enough to shift the way of seeing. Where once there was only frustration, now there was curiosity. Instead of accusing the other, the traveler asked, "What in myself is rising?" Instead of turning away, there was a step closer. The conflict no longer appeared as punishment, but as a teacher. Every ripple of the river became a reminder that karma unfolds not to harm, but to awaken, not to bind, but to release. And in this shift, a door opened to compassion. This moment of awakening was not the end of the quarrels. The river still surged. The disagreements still appeared, but beneath them ran a current of understanding. The knowledge that these two souls were not enemies trapped in endless argument. They were companions invited to free each other, bound by the thread of karma until the lesson of love and patience could be learned. And with that, seeing the journey across the river no longer felt like a curse. It began to feel like a path toward freedom. The restless river teaches in silence, for Zen Buddhism reminds us that what we call conflict is rarely the problem itself. The problem lies in how we see it, in the ignorance that blinds us to the deeper cause, in the clinging to self that refuses to let go, in the belief that I am right and you are wrong. Ignorance and attachment form the roots of suffering, and so they repeat themselves again and again, weaving the same quarrels through different moments, like a wheel that spins without rest. Every quarrel between husband and wife in the modern world can be seen in this way. When money becomes scarce, when work steals time, when stress builds until words turn sharp, and the surface cause may look new, but the underlying pattern is old. It is the pattern of clinging to self, the insistence that my comfort is more important than yours, my view more correct than yours. In the light of Zen, These quarrels are not punishments. They are opportunities, each one a mirror showing us the places where we still cling, where ignorance still lives. The lesson of the river is patience, for no one crosses by force. The water resists those who push too hard, but it supports those who flow gently. In the same way, no quarrel is softened by anger, but it can be transformed by awareness. When one partner breathes into the moment instead of reacting, when one allows silence to be spacious rather than cold, then compassion enters, patience grows, and the debt begins to dissolve. This is not a grand miracle. It is a simple practice repeated in the small storms of daily life. The river also teaches impermanence, for no wave lasts forever. The quarrel that feels overwhelming will pass if one does not feed it. But when anger is fed by blame, it grows stronger. When it is met with mindfulness, it fades, like a ripple that disappears back into the whole. The lesson is not to escape conflict, but to see it clearly, to let it rise and fall without grasping, to learn from it, as one learns from the breath, present, fleeting, essential. Through this view, karma is not a sentence. It is a field of learning. What we plant returns, and if we plant compassion today, it will return tomorrow. If we plant patience now, it will return when the next quarrel rises. Husband and wife who see this truth begin to walk differently. Their quarrels remain, but their hearts soften. The river no longer feels like a punishment, but like a teacher carrying them into deeper understanding, reminding them that each conflict is not the end of love, but a doorway to a wiser love, one that knows how to endure, how to forgive, how to grow. Teachings remain distant until they are lived. Zen Buddhism is not only for temples or silent halls. In sitt desiore, ivisok deva kamai. It is for the living room, the kitchen, the busy office. It is for the marriage where quarrels rise and patience grows thin. To bring the lesson of the river into daily life, we begin with mindfulness, the simple act of breathing in awareness, the gentle act of observing without judgment. When a quarrel begins, the natural reaction is to speak quickly, to defend, to accuse, yet the practice is to pause, even for one breath, to feel the air enter and leave, to notice the fire in the chest, to see the thought forming before it becomes a word. This single act interrupts the cycle. It gives space for choice, and in that space, compassion may arise. Instead of reacting, one may respond. Instead of accusing, one may soften. Another practice is reflection. After the quarrel, when silence returns, one can write. A journal becomes the mirror where karma is revealed. One writes not to blame, but to see, to ask, what in me was touched? What old wound was stirred? What lesson is returning? In this way, the quarrel is not wasted. It becomes a step toward awakening, a record of the knots untangling, the debts dissolving, the heart opening little by little. In the busy lives of the West, where work and responsibility pull constantly, these practices may seem small, yet their power lies in their simplicity. Mindfulness of breath takes only a moment, journaling a few minutes. Yet they shift the pattern. They plant new seeds, and slowly the field of karma changes. Quarrels soften, compassion grows. There will be setbacks. The same arguments may return. Disappointment may rise again. Patience may falter. Yet Zen teaches that failure is not the end. It is part of the path. Each time one returns to the breath, each time one writes again, the knot loosens further, like water polishing stone. The change may be slow, but it is certain, and with each step, the marriage becomes not a battlefield, but a place of practice, not a debt to endure, but a path to freedom. As the story of the two travelers unfolds, we see that the restless river is not an obstacle, but a teacher. The quarrels of marriage are not punishments, but invitations. The invisible thread that binds us is karma, yet karma is not a prison. It is a path. It leads us toward understanding if we walk with awareness. It leads us toward compassion if we breathe with patience. The river is wide, but it can be crossed, not by strength alone, not by patience alone, but by walking together with open hearts. To live this teaching, we can imagine the river calm, its surface smooth beneath the morning light. Two travelers standing hand in hand, no longer in quarrel, but in peace. This image is more than a dream. It is a vision of what marriage can become when seen through the eyes of compassion, when every quarrel is met as a lesson, when every sharp word is softened by patience, when every old debt is dissolved by forgiveness. Then the marriage becomes a sanctuary, a place where karma is not a chain, but a garden. The call is simple yet profound. Begin today. In the next quarrel, pause for one breath. In the next silence, pick up the pen and write. In the next surge of anger, choose to see the thread. Choose to soften. These are not grand gestures. They are seeds, yet every forest grows from seeds. Every river flows from drops, and with each act of mindfulness and compassion, the burden of karma lightens. The thread becomes less heavy, the path more free. This journey is not only for oneself, it is also for others. When you live with compassion, your children feel it. Your friends sense it. Your community benefits from it. The lesson of the river spreads beyond two souls into many. It becomes a ripple of peace, a wave of healing, a current that carries countless beings toward awakening. And so your practice is not small. It is vast. It is part of the endless river of life. If you have felt even a moment of peace in these reflections, let it grow. Let it guide your days. And if you wish to nurture this journey further, join us. Take a step into the practice of Zen Buddhism, into the quiet path of awareness and compassion, into the river that leads not to despair, but to freedom. A single moment of peace can change a life. Let it be yours. Let it be shared. Subscribe to Zen Buddhism and let us walk this path together, multiplying peace, one breath at a time. The forest was covered in a deep curtain of mist, and each tree stood silent as if holding a secret that the two travelers could not yet understand. Their steps echoed softly on the damp earth, and in their silence there was a story of love that had lost its warmth. Once they had walked with laughter and light, but now they moved as companions who felt like strangers. The faint lantern they carried trembled in the heavy fog, its light fragile and uncertain, just like the bond of their marriage, which had begun to fade under the weight of years and expectations. As the mist thickened, they could no longer see each other clearly, though they walked side by side. The distance between their hearts was wider than the shadows of the forest. In many Western homes, the same fog appears. Couples live together, yet find themselves unable to truly meet. Their conversations shrink into short exchanges about bills and chores. Their eyes meet across the dinner table, but the warmth is gone. What once was a bright flame of love becomes a small flickering glow, and like the lantern in the mist, it can barely guide them forward. The man looked at the lantern and quietly blamed his partner for letting the oil run dry. The woman looked at the same light and thought the same of him. Both carried silent resentments and unspoken disappointments. In the silence, the forest whispered of countless marriages where differences of lifestyle and personal growth slowly eroded closeness. The fog was the loneliness of nights spent together yet apart. The lantern was the shared dream that had weakened over time, and the path ahead seemed longer and colder with each step. Yet they continued to walk, guided not by love, but by habit and fear of the unknown. The dim lantern became the symbol of a union that still exists in form, but not in spirit. And just as they felt lost in the forest, many couples in modern Western life find themselves in relationships where the connection no longer lights the way. They carry on out of duty or fear of separation. Yet deep inside, they sense that the mist has already swallowed the bond. The lantern is fading, and the path may soon require them to choose a new direction. In the stillness of the forest, the lantern continued to dim, and in that fading light, there was a deeper truth. Impermanence, anicca, the simple yet profound teaching of the Buddha. All things arise, and all things pass away. Just as dawn rises and night returns, relationships too are shaped by conditions. When the conditions that once nourished love have changed or disappeared, the flame of that love will naturally weaken. Just as the lantern fades when its oil runs out, no matter how much one desires to keep it bright, the law of impermanence continues its course without pause and without exception, reminding us that nothing fixed can be found in this flowing world. In marriage, this truth is often resisted. Couples hold tightly to the belief that love should remain the same. They expect that the passion and harmony of early years will endure without change. Yet in reality, relationships are living currents. They respond to the growth and struggles of both partners. A love once fueled by shared dreams may shift as individual needs evolve. Careers demand more time. Children bring new responsibilities, and the pressures of modern life press heavily on the heart. When the karmic lessons that bound two people together have been completed, the bond may loosen, and to cling to what has already fulfilled its purpose is to invite suffering, like a traveler who refuses to accept that night has fallen and insists the sun must still be shining. The pain of separation does not come solely from the ending itself. Often it is born from grasping, from the unwillingness to let go, from the fear of being alone. In many Western households, this fear is magnified by cultural ideals. Success is often measured by the appearance of a lifelong partnership, and so couples push themselves to remain even when the connection has dried up. Conversations become heavy with duty rather than joy. The shared home becomes a place of silence rather than warmth. They believe that letting go would mean failure, a betrayal of vows, or a sign of weakness. Yet the Dharma teaches differently. Letting go is not defeat. It is the natural rhythm of life. It is to recognize the impermanent nature of all things and to release with grace and compassion, to allow what has served its course to rest. When one begins to see impermanence clearly, the burden of clinging softens. Instead of fighting against the end of a bond, one can honor what has been shared. Memories can be held with gratitude rather than regret. The forest mist then becomes not a prison, but a passage, a gentle veil guiding toward a new horizon. Every ending is also a beginning. Every extinguished flame creates space for another dawn. The teaching of impermanence does not erase love. It transforms it. It shows us that love in any form is a gift, even when it changes, even when it ends. The tenderness felt in the past does not vanish. It becomes part of the soil from which new understanding and compassion may grow. Just as fallen leaves enrich the earth for future blossoms, to accept impermanence is to walk with courage into the unknown. It is to release the lantern when its oil is gone, and to trust that the morning light will return in another form. It is to see that what we fear most, the fading of connection, is not a punishment but a teaching. It reminds us that our true refuge is not in holding another endlessly, but in awakening to the boundless nature of the heart itself. This is the gentle wisdom of Zen. To let go is to be free. To let go is to love without chains. To let go is to meet life as it is, tender and transient, yet beautiful beyond measure. He two travelers in the mist could not accept the fading light. Their hands trembled as they tried to protect the lantern. They placed leaves around the weak flame. They cupped their palms to shield it from the damp air. They blew gently, as if their breath alone could restore what had already run its course. Yet nothing could bring the brightness back. The oil was gone. The wick nearly burned, but still they clung to it, as though holding tighter might change the truth. The forest around them grew darker, yet their eyes refused to look beyond the lantern. They could not accept what was ending. This struggle is the story of many couples. When love begins to fade, they resist with all their strength. They attend endless therapy sessions. They take long vacations hoping to rediscover the spark. They buy gifts. They rearrange their lives. But beneath these efforts, the truth whispers, the flame has already weakened. No matter how many twigs are added to a lamp without oil, the light cannot be restored. Yet fear drives them forward. Fear of loneliness, fear of judgment, fear of facing the silence of a life without the other. So they grasp the lantern more tightly. exhausting themselves with each attempt to revive what no longer belongs to the present moment. As the travelers walked deeper into the mist, their steps grew heavier. Each time the flame flickered, the man accused the woman of not protecting it enough. The woman, in turn, accused the man of neglecting their journey. Blame grew like shadows stretching across the forest floor. Instead of softening into acceptance, they sharpened into bitterness. The lantern that once symbolized their shared path became a weapon of conflict. In the same way, many relationships turn sour when clinging is stronger than love. The bond is no longer nurtured, but forced, and the more it is forced, the more it collapses under the weight of expectation. Eventually, the flame went out, and silence fell heavy on their shoulders. Yet, they still held the empty lantern frame, unwilling to let it go, still imagining that if they held it long enough, light might return. But the forest remained dark, their direction lost, their bodies weary, their spirits torn. This is the sorrow of resisting impermanence, when one cannot release what has already ended. One becomes lost in the fog of suffering, unable to see that letting go is the only step that brings freedom. Their clinging did not preserve love, it only deepened confusion. Yet within this very darkness, there is also a hidden teaching. The forest itself seemed to whisper it to them, though they were too tired to hear. It said that when a flame dies, it is not the end of light. It is a turning, a moment when one must trust the dawn to rise again. Zen reminds us that emptiness is not despair. It is spaciousness. Only when the lantern is released can the eyes adjust to the natural light that still exists. Only when the hands are open can something new be received. To cling to what is gone is to remain blind. To release is to begin to see again. The two travelers stood at the edge of surrender, their lantern gone, their path invisible, and in that moment, they were invited to choose, to keep holding the empty frame, or to let it fall and lift their gaze toward the mist itself. Perhaps then they would notice that the forest, though dark, was alive with the quiet glow of fireflies, with the faint shimmer of stars hidden above the fog. Light had never truly left them. It had only changed its form. So too with love. When one bond ends, it does not mean love has vanished. It has simply moved, waiting to be discovered in another way, another time, another openness of heart. This is the truth the lantern could never hold forever. And this is the lesson that clinging could never reveal. The mist in the forest still hung heavy, and the path seemed endless. The couple had long struggled with their dim lantern, clinging to it, though the flame had almost vanished. Their steps grew weary, their voices faded into silence, and in that silence, one of them paused for the first time. Instead of reaching for the dying flame, they placed the lantern down gently on the ground, their hands no longer shaking with fear, but resting with a quiet calm. In that stillness, they realized that the journey could not continue as it was. With slow breath, they reached into their bag and found a small spark hidden within a piece of flint, long carried but never used. They struck it carefully, and a new light appeared. This was not a light shared in desperation, but one born from acceptance. The glow was modest, yet steady. It illuminated only their own steps, but in that gentle light, the heart softened. The truth of impermanence appeared like a whisper in the fog. Everything changes, everything moves, and no bond, no matter how precious, can remain unchanged forever. As they held this new lantern close, a wave of gratitude rose within, instead of mourning the fading light of the shared flame. They gave thanks for the warmth it once offered, the nights it brightened, and the paths it revealed. They saw clearly that the bond had been a gift, but the time for walking together had ended, not with anger, not with blame, but with the natural rhythm of life. This gratitude opened space in the heart, space wide enough to let compassion flow toward the other traveler, who now faded into the mist with their own lessons to learn. The farewell did not carry bitterness. It carried blessing. The forest no longer felt like a place of loss, but like a passage where one journey became two. The light that once seemed to vanish had only changed form, and in that change came a quiet freedom. Walking alone was no longer a punishment. It was an invitation to discover new strength and new horizons. The lantern shone steadily, a reminder that to release with kindness is not to lose, but to love in a deeper, truer way. And in that moment, the mist felt lighter, as though the forest itself exhaled in peace. When the new lantern was lit, and the traveler felt the soft glow of acceptance, a deeper reflection arose in the heart. What truly allows us to move through the forest of endings without being trapped in suffering? The teachings of the Buddha point gently to two actions, simple in words, yet profound in healing. The first is to release with gratitude. The second is to cultivate compassion within. To release with gratitude means to see the bond not as wasted time, but as a completed chapter. It is to thank the shared days for their lessons, the joys and the sorrows, the laughter and the tears. Many suffer because they grasp at the memory of what once was, wishing it could be relived. But gratitude transforms this grasping into a blessing. It turns the fading lantern into a sacred light that guided us when we needed it. Gratitude does not deny the pain of parting, but it softens the edges and allows the heart to breathe again. The second action is to cultivate compassion within, not only for the other, but most importantly, for oneself. Separation often awakens harsh voices of blame, anger, or unworthiness, but compassion opens a gentler dialogue. It reminds us that both travelers were doing their best with the conditions they had, that no one is to be condemned for the natural flow of impermanence. Compassion for oneself allows healing to begin. It says quietly, "You too deserve peace. You too deserve to walk with lightness, even after the bond has ended." Without these two actions, clinging continues to wound, like a traveler refusing to let go of a broken lantern. They stumble endlessly in the fog. The suffering does not come from the ending itself, but from the refusal to accept and to love what was with an open heart. When gratitude and compassion are embraced, the ending becomes not a prison, but a gateway. The mist still surrounds, Yet within it, a clear path begins to appear. Thus, the teaching is simple, but not easy to practice. We must learn to thank what is gone and to hold kindness toward all that remains. When these two actions come together, the forest brightens, not with the fire of longing, but with the steady flame of wisdom and peace. The heart that once feared emptiness now feels spacious. The bond that once chained now blesses from afar, and the journey that once seemed broken now continues with clarity and quiet strength. To embody these teachings, practice is needed, for without practice, the words remain distant, like stars seen but never touched. The traveler with the new lantern learned to nurture their heart through meditation of gratitude and compassion. Each night, they sat quietly in the forest, breathing slowly, placing both hands upon their heart. With every breath, they recalled moments once shared, and instead of clinging, they whispered, "Thank you. Thank you for the warmth. Thank you for the lessons. Thank you for walking beside me for as long as the path allowed." This meditation of gratitude transforms memory into blessing. Instead of a chain, it becomes a gentle stream flowing through the heart with softness. After the meditation, they turned to writing as another practice. Opening a small notebook, they began to write words of self-love, writing, "I am worthy of peace. I am learning to walk in kindness. I am grateful for my journey." These words became lanterns within the mind, each sentence a flame against the cold mist of loneliness. Still, the nights were not always easy. Sometimes the fog thickened, and the silence of the forest echoed with ache. In those moments, mindfulness was the key. The traveler did not run from loneliness, nor drown in it. Instead, they observed it, breathing with it, whispering, "I see you. You are part of the path, but you will also pass like the mist. You are not forever." This gentle awareness prevented despair and allowed the traveler to keep walking. Even when the way seemed empty, through time the practices deepened. The meditation of gratitude softened the sharp edges of memory. The journal of compassion nurtured the sense of worth, and mindfulness carried them across the valleys of solitude. Slowly, the forest began to look less like a trap and more like a sanctuary. The mist no longer suffocated but cooled the skin. The silence no longer punished but comforted. The path no longer frightened but invited. Each step became not a burden but a prayer of healing. Thus, the practice of gratitude, compassion, and mindfulness transforms endings into beginnings. It teaches that even in the darkest forest, there is always light waiting to be kindled within. And when this inner lantern shines, one does not fear walking alone, for solitude becomes a companion, and the heart finds peace not by escaping the mist, but by walking through it with presence and love. At the end of the journey, the forest began to clear. The mist that once blinded the eyes now lifted like a curtain, revealing the path ahead. The traveler stood still, lantern in hand, and for the first time, they could see the forest not as a maze, but as a home. What was once filled with fear now held beauty. Every tree, every shadow, every silence was part of the same whole. They realized that endings had never been losses. They were transformations that made space for new beginnings. In this clarity, two images remained bright in the heart. The first was the old lantern placed gently on the ground, a symbol of gratitude for what had been. The second was the new lantern held close, a symbol of compassion and strength. These two images reminded them of the two actions that carried them through: to thank and to let go, to love and to release. When practiced together, they turned pain into peace and separation into freedom. As they walked forward, they no longer asked why the bond ended. They no longer wished to rewrite the past. Instead, they honored it as sacred and stepped into the present with lightness. This is the gift of Zen practice. It teaches us to bow to impermanence and to walk with grace. It invites us to see that even when one chapter closes, another is waiting to be written, not with fear, but with trust in the rhythm of life. So let this story be not only a reflection, but a call for practice in your own life. If you are walking through mist, if your lantern has dimmed, remember to place it down with gratitude and to kindle a new one with compassion. Practice the two actions. Thank what is past and love what remains, and you too will find that the forest begins to brighten, that the mist begins to thin, that the path opens once again. And if these words bring a moment of peace to you, carry it forward. Share it with those who may also be walking in fog. And remember that you are never alone in the journey. Every step taken with mindfulness and compassion is a step shared with countless others who walk toward healing. And if you wish for more moments of stillness and gentle guidance, join us here again. A moment of peace is precious. Let us multiply it together. Subscribe to Zen Buddhism and let the lantern of wisdom continue to shine in your life. The garden was vast and alive with colors and scents. Every corner filled with green leaves and blossoms that seemed to sing with the wind. Yet, in the middle of this abundance, stood one fragile flower that refused to open. No matter how much the gardener tended to it, no matter how gently he watered the soil, or how carefully he shielded its stem from storms, this single flower remained closed, its petals tight as if hiding its beauty from the world. The gardener tried harder each day, believing that his devotion alone would one day make the flower bloom. The gardener's heart was pure. He wished only to see life flourish. So he poured his energy into this flower more than all the others. He rose at dawn to check its roots. He spoke softly to it as though his words might carry light into its core. He gave more than he had, not noticing how his back grew weary or how the skin on his hands cracked under the work. His love for the flower became his burden, and the more he gave, the more the flower seemed to wither, its leaves curling slightly, its stem drooping, as if rejecting every effort. In the silence of the garden, the gardener began to feel a heaviness in his chest. He looked around and saw other flowers blooming with joy, their colors bright under the sun, their fragrance spreading naturally without effort. And he wondered why this one flower, the one he loved most, remained ungrateful to his care. A sadness rose inside him like a cloud, for he felt unseen, as if all his nurturing was nothing but invisible labor carried into emptiness. This is the heart of many who give endlessly in marriage, offering patience, food, comfort, presence, only to feel that their partner's eyes no longer notice, as though the bond that was once bright has dulled into habit. At first, the gardener thought perhaps he had not given enough, so he worked harder, watering more, trimming more, carrying richer soil to the roots. Yet the more he gave, the weaker the flower appeared. The irony pierced him. He felt trapped in a cycle where love became labor and labor became disappointment. He was not lacking in effort, but the life before him showed no gratitude, only a mirror of his frustration. And within this story lies the subtle suffering of a partner who sacrifices too much, hoping that devotion will be returned with tenderness, yet finding only silence and distance. The garden is both a picture of beauty and a mirror of pain. In its quiet form, it teaches that effort alone cannot force blooming. In the same way, in marriage, no amount of giving can guarantee recognition. And sometimes, the more we strive to be everything for the other, the more invisible we become. Like the gardener, we may find ourselves kneeling before a flower that will never respond as we expect, our tears falling like extra drops of water that do not heal but drown the roots. And so begins the long inner question: why does love given with such sincerity sometimes fail to be cherished? The story of the gardener and the flower that would not bloom is not a tale of failure, but an invitation to see the invisible burden that arises when giving becomes attachment. It is a mirror for the heart that suffers in silence, the one who works tirelessly, yet feels unseen. Here, the Zen path offers a space of reflection, reminding us that love is not measured by how much we give or how hard we try, but by the freedom we allow both ourselves and the other. When the gardener can pause and breathe, he may begin to see that the flower has its own timing, its own nature, and that sometimes true care means stepping back, allowing life to unfold in its own rhythm. This is the beginning of understanding the nature of karmic ties in love. In the silence of Zen teaching, there is a reminder that the root of suffering is not always in what we give, but in the subtle expectation that follows after giving. When love is offered with the hidden hope that it will be returned in the same form, the act of giving becomes a chain rather than a gift. It binds the heart with disappointment when the response does not come. This is the invisible thread of karma, weaving balance in ways we cannot always see. When the gardener waters the flower with the dream that it must bloom, the water carries not only care, but also an attachment to an outcome. And this attachment is what creates heaviness in the soul. In marriage, many hearts fall into this quiet trap, believing that if they sacrifice more, if they give up more of their own needs, then love will grow stronger. Yet the more one demands recognition from the act of giving, the more fragile the bond becomes, for the partner begins to feel the weight of obligation rather than the freedom of love. It is not that the gift is unworthy. It is that the energy of expectation poisons its purity. A meal cooked with resentment, a gesture offered with hidden demand, a word spoken with the hope of return. All of these create tension that echoes silently between two souls. The Buddha taught that clinging is the seed of suffering. When we hold too tightly to the idea that our devotion must be acknowledged, we set ourselves against the flow of reality. Life does not always return what we give in the form we desire, and love does not grow stronger through force. Instead, when one gives without holding, the heart remains light. But when one gives with craving for response, the heart becomes heavy. The gardener believes that more water will awaken the flower. Yet the flower cannot bloom simply by command. It has its own timing and its own karma. So too does a partner, and no amount of pressure disguised as kindness can unlock the natural unfolding of their heart. The common mistake is to give even more when unrecognized, to work harder, to pour out every drop of strength in the hope that one day the partner will see, but this only deepens the cycle. Like a person trapped in quicksand, the more they struggle, the deeper they sink, and the more invisible their efforts appear. Thus, the teaching becomes clear. True giving is not measured by quantity, but by freedom. When love is offered without a hook, it is light like a feather. It lands gently in the life of the other without demanding anything in return. And paradoxically, this is when love is most likely to be seen and valued, because it is pure. To step out of the trap of excessive giving is not to stop caring. It is to care wisely, to water the flower with gentleness, but also with awareness that its blooming is not under our control, to cook a meal with joy rather than duty, to offer presents without counting the hours, to speak words of kindness without waiting for echoes. In this way, the balance of karma shifts, the invisible burden dissolves, and what remains is a love that nourishes both giver and receiver. This is the Zen way of transforming attachment into freedom, of transforming silent suffering into gentle awareness, and of seeing clearly that the trap of excessive giving is only loosened when we let go of the demand that love must return in the form we imagined. One morning, the gardener rose before the sun, determined that today he would finally awaken the flower. He carried more water than before, pouring it again and again at the base of the fragile stem. He whispered. With hope, he begged the flower to rise. Yet as the soil grew heavier with water, the roots suffocated, the leaves drooped further, and instead of blooming, the flower weakened before his very eyes. The gardener's heart sank, for the more he gave, the more the flower slipped away. This became a painful truth, that love offered without balance can turn into the very force that destroys the bond. In many relationships, this story repeats itself in hidden forms. One partner gives so much of their time, their energy, their identity, that they begin to drown the relationship rather than nourish it. At first, it may seem like devotion, but underneath is a desire to be needed, to be indispensable to secure recognition by sacrifice. Yet the result is often distance. The partner feels suffocated, unable to breathe freely, as though every act of kindness carries a shadow of demand. The more love is pressed, the more it withers, until two people who once held each other with joy now stand apart with exhaustion. The gardener did not see that flowers do not thrive on water alone. They also need space, sunlight, and air. So too in love, the heart does not bloom on sacrifice alone. It also needs freedom, respect, and shared joy. When one partner tries to replace all with sacrifice, they remove the natural rhythm of balance. The soil becomes heavy. The roots cannot breathe. The connection turns into dependency rather than harmony. And in the quiet space between two people, resentment begins to grow like weeds. The more the gardener poured, the more he lost himself. His days were no longer about tending the garden as a whole, but about saving the one flower that refused to respond. This obsession became his prison. He forgot the joy of tending other blossoms. He forgot the peace of sitting under the shade of trees. He became a servant to his own attachment. And this is the mirror for anyone who loses themselves in trying too hard to hold love, forgetting that love is never meant to be forced. It is meant to flow. In Zen, we learn that too much effort can be as harmful as too little. That kindness without wisdom is like water without measure, drowning rather than sustaining. The teaching is not to give less, but to give with awareness, to listen deeply to what is truly needed. Sometimes what a partner needs is not more sacrifice, but more space. Sometimes what they need is not constant support, but quiet trust. When the gardener learns to step back, to let the soil breathe, the flower may find its own way to bloom, or perhaps it never will. Yet the gardener himself will be free to see that his worth is not tied to the gratitude of one fragile flower, but to the boundless garden of life that always offers renewal. Thus, the story closes with a gentle lesson. Love must be balanced like water and soil, like sunlight and shade. When we give with clinging, we suffocate both ourselves and the one we love. When we give with clarity and presence, we create space for both to grow. The flower may or may not open, but the heart of the gardener remains light. This is the way to transform suffering in marriage, not by giving more blindly, but by giving wisely, with freedom, with breath, with the quiet trust that true love does not need to be forced. It only needs to be allowed. The gardener returned to his garden one morning as the sky was painted with soft light. His steps were slower, his heart no longer burning with restless desire. He still carried water in his hands, but this time he did not dream of petals unfolding or colors bursting open. Instead, he simply knelt and poured the water into the soil with quiet care. He whispered words of kindness, not because he wanted to awaken the flower, but because kindness itself had become his breath. He touched the earth and smiled gently, for the act of giving was now whole in itself. The flower still stood with its petals closed, Yet something invisible had shifted. The gardener was not waiting anymore. His eyes no longer measured time. His heart no longer carried the weight of disappointment. He began to notice the fragrance of other blossoms, the soft hum of bees, the warmth of sunlight, and he realized that life was already blooming all around him. The one flower did not define his worth. The one flower did not hold his joy hostage. In this realization, his burden lifted like morning mist dissolving under the rising sun. It was not that he stopped caring. It was that he cared in a new way, a way free from clinging, a way that allowed both himself and the flower to simply be. He understood now that his devotion was beautiful because it arose from love itself, not from the hunger for recognition. The flower could bloom or remain closed. It no longer mattered because the gardener's heart had found peace in the act of giving without demand. This was the moment of awakening. Quiet, simple, yet profound. From this moment, he turned his gaze inward and discovered a truth that had always been hidden beneath his longing, that his value did not come from the flower's response, but from the depth of his own heart, that the dignity of love is not measured by what it receives, but by how freely it flows. The gardener rose, his hands still wet with water, his eyes resting softly on the whole garden, and he walked away lighter, knowing that to love without clinging is to walk the path of true freedom. In Zen, there is a teaching that whispers like the wind through pine trees. It says that the heart suffers not because of love itself, but because of the clinging that entangles love. Attachment to results is the hidden thorn. It pierces quietly. The more we hold to the dream that our giving must return in the form of recognition or gratitude, the more we create the conditions for pain. The Buddha taught that craving is the root of suffering, and in the space of marriage, this truth appears again and again. Imagine a partner who wakes early every day, preparing meals, arranging the home, offering countless gestures of care. If all these actions are carried by the hope that the other will praise, acknowledge, or mirror back love in the same shape, then each act carries a hook, invisible yet heavy. When the praise does not come, resentment grows like weeds. When the gratitude is absent, the giver feels unseen. The energy of love becomes tangled with bitterness. What began as kindness turns into quiet anger, and this cycle slowly drains the soul. Non-attachment does not mean that we stop loving. It means we learn to love more wisely, without imprisoning either ourselves or the other in chains of expectation. To practice non-attachment is to give fully, but to release the result, to pour water into the soil without demanding a bloom, to speak with kindness without waiting for echo, to hold the hand of a partner without measuring how tightly they hold back. In this way, love transforms into freedom, and the heart remains light. When attachment rules the heart, every gesture becomes a transaction. It whispers, "I gave you this, now you must give me that." But when non-attachment guides us, the gesture becomes pure. It is complete in itself. And paradoxically, This is often when love is most deeply felt, for nothing is heavier than love wrapped in demand, and nothing is lighter than love that flows without condition. In Zen, we see that compassion must be like rain, falling freely, touching all things without asking for return, nourishing because it is its nature, not because it seeks reward. The path of non-attachment asks us to release the illusion of control. We cannot command the heart of another. We cannot script the timing of their gratitude. We cannot hold life still. What we can do is turn inward and discover that love is already whole within us. When we realize this, we are no longer enslaved by craving. We no longer overwater the flower, hoping to force its bloom. We simply offer what we can with open hands. And in doing so, we free both ourselves and the other. This is the essence of Zen love. Compassionate, vast, fearless, and without chains. Wisdom becomes alive only when it is lived. So we ask, how can we bring non-attachment into the fabric of daily life? How can we transform the silent suffering of unmet expectations into the lightness of unconditional love? The answer begins with turning inward and affirming our own worth. For as long as we believe that recognition from another defines us, we will remain chained to their response. Each morning, we can sit quietly, place a hand on the heart, and breathe slowly, repeating inwardly, "My value is whole. My love is complete within itself. My life is enough as it is." This affirmation may feel small, yet it plants seeds of strength. It reminds the heart that its dignity is not for sale. It is not measured by applause or neglect. From this ground, we begin to give differently, not to prove, not to demand, but simply to express the fullness that already resides within. When we cook with joy. When we listen without judgment. When we offer help, we do so without counting. Each action becomes an offering of presence rather than a transaction of need. Of course, the mind resists. Old patterns rise. When our gesture goes unnoticed, we feel the sting of invisibility. When gratitude is absent, resentment whispers. In such moments, we pause, we breathe. We remember the image of the gardener, and we ask, am I overwatering? Am I trying to force a bloom? We then return to the breath and release. We remind ourselves that the act itself is complete, that love is already alive in the giving, and slowly the habit of clinging loosens. Over time, this practice transforms the relationship. It shifts the energy from heavy demand to gentle presence. The partner feels less pressure, more space, more freedom to respond authentically. Sometimes they begin to open naturally. Sometimes they remain closed. But the difference is that our heart no longer collapses with their silence. We remain steady. Anchored in our own clarity, we see love as a flowing river rather than a contract to be signed. And this shift brings peace that no amount of external validation can provide. In this way, the practice of non-attachment becomes not just philosophy, but daily rhythm. It softens the heart. It dissolves resentment. It restores balance. It teaches us to give like the sun shining, because shining is its nature. And in this simple yet profound shift, suffering begins to fade, and what remains is a love that nourishes without fear. The story circles back to the garden. The gardener now rests beneath the branches of a tree, his gaze no longer locked on the stubborn flower. Instead, he sees the whole garden alive with colors. He breathes in the fragrance, he listens to the hum of life, and he feels at peace. The flower may bloom or not. It does not matter. What matters is that his love has become free, no longer bound by demand, no longer burdened by invisible chains. This is the garden of non-attachment, where love flows without fear. Imagine living each day in this spirit. Imagine cooking, not because you must, but because joy rises in you. Imagine listening, not because you want praise, but because presence itself is healing. Imagine holding your partner's hand without silently asking them to hold tighter. This is the vision of unconditional love. A love that liberates both hearts. A love that does not suffocate, but breathes like open sky. In such a life, the garden of relationship blossoms naturally, each flower blooming in its own season. And even if some never open, the beauty of the whole remains untouched. This reflection is not only a story, it is a call to each of us who have carried invisible burdens in love, who have poured water endlessly, waiting for blooms that never came, who have felt unseen despite endless sacrifice. Let us step into a new way. Let us release the weight of expectation. Let us love with freedom, giving not to bind, but to bless, offering not to control, but to nourish. This is the way of Zen, the way of compassion without chains. As you carry these teachings into your life, know that transformation does not happen in a single moment. It grows slowly, like a seed, nurtured with patience and practice. Each breath of awareness waters it. Each act of mindful giving strengthens it. And over time, the burden becomes lighter. The heart becomes freer, and the relationship becomes a space of deeper peace. Whether or not it looks like the story you once dreamed. And so, dear friend, if this vision touches you, if these words bring even a moment of peace, let this be a beginning. Walk with us on the path of Zen healing. Subscribe to Zen Buddhism to nurture these moments, to multiply the glimpses of stillness, and to let the garden of your own life bloom with freedom and compassion. Together, we create not only stories, but living gardens, each one carrying the fragrance of unconditional love. At the edge of a misty crossroad, 3 images appeared as if carried by the quiet breath of destiny. A flowing river winding its path through stones and reeds, a glowing lamp flickering gently in the night, and a small garden where blossoms pushed through dark soil. Each stood alone, yet when placed together, they seemed like 3 travelers who arrived from different directions. Their presence spoke of marriage, of love, of the weaving threads of karma that join people in ways beyond what the eyes can see. The crossroad itself was heavy with fog, a place where choices feel unclear and paths disappear into the unknown. The river carried the sound of constant movement, a reminder that nothing stays the same. The lamp shed light that could guide, but also revealed shadows. When the wind shook its flame, the garden stood silent and still, a sanctuary, yet also a place where growth demanded patience. These three were not separate. They were mirrors of the same story. Just as in marriage, the flow of life, the need for guidance, and the cultivation of care are woven together. Yet as with all unions, challenges rose. The river sometimes flooded, carrying anger and words spoken too quickly, sweeping away bridges that once felt safe. The lamp sometimes dimmed as doubt and mistrust crept in, leaving one stumbling in darkness. The garden sometimes grew weeds when neglect or attachment choked out tender blossoms. These images were not only gentle, they carried both beauty and struggle, much like the vows and promises of two people trying to walk a path together. Conflict appeared naturally within this meeting. The river and the lamp argued in silence, one moving too quickly, the other flickering too fragile to keep pace. The garden longed for balance, but could not hold back the currents or shield the flame from wind. Such is the truth of life together. Impermanence touches every bond, and the clinging to what once was brings suffering. Couples often believe love can be frozen at its brightest moment, but the river flows, the lamp fades, and the garden changes with every season. When one denies this truth, struggle deepens. In this shared landscape, one sees the delicate dance of attachment and letting go. The partners in marriage may stand at a crossroad, feeling the fog of confusion, uncertain of what step to take forward. Some may grasp tightly at the river, wishing it never floods. Some may protect the lamp with forceful hands, suffocating its flame. Some may try to control the garden, demanding blossoms before their season. Yet the more one tries to hold, the more one suffers. The more one commands, the less life responds with harmony. This crossroad is the reflection of karma, the unseen threads that brought the couple together and also test their patience. When we step back, the three images show not separation, but interconnection. The river needs the lamp to reveal its banks. The lamp needs the garden to shield it from the storm. The garden needs the river to water its roots. Together, they create a living whole. Just as in marriage, the presence of impermanence and attachment and the challenge of karma cannot be faced alone, but must be held together. The story of these three is not an ending, but a beginning. It is the call to see that love is not only sweetness, it is also a field of practice where suffering becomes a teacher, and unity arises when one accepts the truth of change. When we look at the river, the lamp, and the garden, not as fragments, but as reflections of one living truth, we begin to see how the teaching of karma, impermanence, and non-attachment weave together like threads in a single cloth. Each principle on its own has meaning, yet when held apart, they can feel incomplete or even confusing. In the same way, couples often try to solve problems one by one without noticing the larger pattern that holds them. Karma reminds us that every word, every action, and every thought plants a seed. Those seeds ripen not only within the self, but within the shared field of relationship. When love becomes a mirror, the karma of two people flows together. What one carries affects the other, and what is hidden often rises to the surface in times of stress. We may think a problem comes only from the moment, but in truth, it is a seed ripened from past causes. This is why in marriage, small disagreements sometimes erupt into great storms, because they touch deep roots formed long before. Impermanence reveals that even karma itself does not stand still. The river never flows in the same way twice. Love that felt secure yesterday may feel fragile today, and yet this is not a flaw. It is the natural movement of life. When partners cling to permanence, they struggle against what is real. They want the lamp to burn with the same brightness forever. They want the garden to bloom with endless spring, but the seasons must turn. The flame must flicker. The river must rise and fall. Only in recognizing impermanence can the heart learn to soften. Non-attachment then enters as the gentle hand that loosens the knot. When one releases the demand that things stay fixed, love becomes freer. Attachment in marriage is not the same as care. Attachment says, "This must be mine. This must remain unchanged." Care says, "I am present with you, even as you change." Attachment fears the fading of beauty. Care waters the soil so that beauty may return in another form. When partners practice non-attachment, they discover that love is not lost in change, but renewed within it. The unity of these three teachings shows a way to transform suffering in relationships. When karma is seen without impermanence, it feels heavy and binding. When impermanence is seen without karma, it feels chaotic and random. When non-attachment is practiced without the other two, it can turn cold or distant. But when brought together, karma teaches responsibility, impermanence teaches flexibility, and non-attachment teaches freedom. Together, they form a circle that holds love with wisdom rather than fear. In daily life, this unity invites couples to step back from the heat of conflict and ask not only what is wrong, but also what seed is ripening, what change is asking to be honored, and what grip can be released. In that moment, suffering can be softened. The river becomes a reminder that past choices flow into present waters. The lamp becomes the guide that shows where light still shines, and the garden becomes the ground where new seeds can be planted with care. This is not theory alone. It is a practice of seeing and choosing again and again. When partners understand this, they no longer treat each challenge as an enemy, but as a messenger. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" they begin to ask, "What is this teaching me?" Instead of resisting impermanence, they begin to walk with it. Instead of clinging to control, they begin to open their hands. Love then shifts from a battlefield to a field of awakening. The unity of karma, impermanence, and non-attachment becomes not only a philosophy, but a healing path. one that carries the couple across the fog of the crossroad toward a clearer horizon. After the meeting at the foggy crossroad, the river, the lamp, and the garden each felt the urge to move on their own. The river thought, "I can carve my way through stone without needing either the lamp or the garden." The lamp thought, "My light is enough to guide without the help of flowing water or blossoming soil." The garden thought, "My blossoms can grow strong without rivers and without lamps." In their hearts, each believed that separation would bring freedom. Yet their steps only led into confusion. The river rushed ahead, confident in its force, but soon found its current spilling wildly with no bank in sight. Without the lamp, its waters could not see where to flow, and began to erode the land around it, drowning the roots of the very life it wished to nourish. The lamp tried to burn brightly, yet without the river to cool its path, and without the garden to shield it from winds, the flame flickered and dimmed until smoke filled the air. The garden tried to flourish, but without the river's water, its soil hardened, and without the lamp's light, its blossoms bent in darkness. Their attempts to walk apart only deepened their suffering. This story mirrors the way couples sometimes respond to conflict. When pain arises, one partner may rush into action like the river, pushing forward with determination, yet unaware of how their actions erode trust. Another may withdraw, like the lamp, trying to shine alone but slowly burning out in isolation. Another may try to remain still like the garden, pretending strength, yet quietly withering inside. Each believes they can solve the struggle alone, but in truth, the threads of relationship tie them together, and pulling away only tightens the knot. The consequences soon became clear. The river grew restless and weary, the lamp nearly extinguished, the garden dry and brittle. The three travelers found themselves drawn back to the crossroad by forces beyond their choosing. Karma pulled them together again, just as in marriage or partnership. Challenges that are avoided return in new forms. Unresolved wounds call out for healing again and again. In this recognition lies both pain and grace. Pain, because avoidance cannot erase suffering. Grace, because life itself continues to offer chances for awakening. In that return to the crossroad, they began to see the truth. Separation is illusion. Just as two people in marriage cannot truly walk two entirely separate paths as long as their lives remain bound by shared seeds, by shared seasons, by shared light, the attempt to solve each problem in isolation created only greater chaos. Because love itself is a field, not a collection of fragments. And so too, karma, impermanence, and non-attachment are not separate teachings, but facets of one jewel. The failure of their first attempt became the seed of wisdom. The river realized it needed the lamp to reveal its edges and the garden to receive its gift of water. The lamp realized it needed the garden to shield its flame and the river to reflect its light. The garden realized it needed both to nourish its blossoms. What was once seen as weakness in connection now appeared as strength. Without connection, each withered. With connection, each could thrive. the chaos turned to clarity as they recognized the strength of unity born through compassion. So in this parable, we see that the first response of the human heart often is to divide, to separate, to try to fix problems alone. Yet life teaches us again and again that wholeness is found not in isolation, but in weaving together the broken threads. When couples return to their crossroad after failed attempts to walk apart, they are invited to see not defeat, but opportunity, the chance to discover that love can grow deeper through shared struggle, and that unity, born of compassion, is the true lamp that lights the way. As the river, the lamp, and the garden returned once more to the misty crossroad, a quiet shift began to stir within them. At first, it was only a faint awareness, a soft pull toward something larger than their separate struggles. The river slowed its rush, listening to the echo of its waters. The lamp steadied its flame, no longer straining against every gust. The garden opened itself to the soil, remembering that patience is also growth. In that stillness, they began to see a single thread running through all three of them. This thread was not visible to the eyes, but could be felt like a silent current flowing beneath their forms. It was the thread of karma, carrying the weight of causes and conditions. It was the thread of impermanence, reminding them that nothing could remain fixed. And it was the thread of non-attachment, urging them to loosen their grasp. What once felt like three different lessons now revealed itself as one cloth woven by the same loom. In that realization, the fog of the crossroad began to thin. The awakening did not come as a sudden blaze, but as a gentle dawn. They saw that their earlier conflicts had been born of separation, of believing each principle could stand alone. The river had tried to master movement without light. The lamp had tried to shine without nourishment. The garden had tried to grow without water or warmth. All had failed because they could not see the unity that bound them together. In that recognition, they turned from fragmentation toward wholeness. In this moment of realization, their journey transformed. Suffering did not disappear, but it softened. The river learned to flow with awareness. The lamp learned to shine with patience. The garden learned to bloom with trust. Together, they embodied a new way of being, one that mirrored the heart of awakening itself, to see unity behind division, to embrace impermanence with compassion, to hold love with open hands. This was not the end of their journey, but the beginning of walking it with eyes newly opened. From the three images, we can draw one teaching that reaches deeply into the life of modern relationships. The lesson that karma, impermanence, and non-attachment are not separate roads, but one path that winds through every connection. In the West, where relationships often carry heavy expectations, and where the pursuit of certainty can weigh on the heart, this integrated vision offers a healing alternative. Karma in this context means that what partners bring into a marriage is not only what they show in the present moment, but also the seeds planted through family history, past relationships, and personal choices. Each partner carries unseen threads that shape how they respond when conflict arises. Western culture often emphasizes individual freedom, yet this freedom does not remove the influence of karma. Instead, it makes awareness even more important, for without mindfulness, old seeds sprout in unconscious ways, creating tension that feels sudden but is deeply rooted. Impermanence then enters as a call to flexibility. Many couples struggle when the relationship shifts over time. One expects the passion of the early days to remain unchanged. Another fears the fading of security. Yet impermanence is not the enemy. It is the very breath of growth. Without change, a marriage cannot deepen. Without the seasons, love becomes stagnant. When couples learn to embrace impermanence, they discover that what fades gives room for what is new. What ends opens space for renewal. Impermanence is not loss. It is transformation. Non-attachment completes the circle by guiding the heart to care without clinging. Western life often promotes attachment to roles, to possessions, to status, and these attachments spill into marriage. When a partner clings to the idea of what the other should be, they suffocate love. When one clings to control, they create resistance. Non-attachment is not indifference. It is presence without chains. It is the willingness to love as the other truly is, not as one imagines them to be. When practiced together with karma and impermanence, non-attachment allows love to breathe. The integrated lesson is that problems in relationships are rarely about surface issues. They are about the deeper misunderstanding of these three truths. When couples try to treat symptoms in isolation, they miss the whole picture. Yet when they view their struggles as threads of the same cloth, healing begins. Awareness of karma brings responsibility. Acceptance of impermanence brings peace. Practice of non-attachment brings freedom. The relationship then becomes a place of awakening rather than a place of suffering. In daily Western life, this may look like pausing in conflict and asking, what seed is ripening here? It may look like honoring that both people are changing and will continue to change. It may look like loosening the grip on fixed expectations and instead meeting each moment with curiosity. These practices sound simple, yet they carry profound power. They turn arguments into opportunities for growth. They turn disappointment into compassion. They turn marriage into a living path of Zen. This is the integrated lesson drawn from the three stories. And it is a gift not only for couples, but for anyone walking the path of love. To bring the teaching from story into life, practice is needed. Otherwise, wisdom remains a distant idea and does not touch the heart. One way to embody this unity is through meditation that brings together the river, the lamp, and the garden as symbols of the path. Begin by closing the eyes and visualizing the river flowing. Imagine the current carrying past actions, words, and choices. See how the water never stands still. Each drop a moment of karma arising and fading. Breathe with this image and allow the body to soften. Then visualize the lamp glowing gently. See how its flame flickers with impermanence, sometimes bright, sometimes dim. Acknowledge that relationships, too, carry this rhythm. Breathe again and let acceptance settle. Finally, bring forth the image of the garden blooming. Notice how blossoms grow when cared for, yet also wither when clung to. Feel how non-attachment allows the soil to remain fertile. Breathe deeply and hold all three images together as one. This meditation can be practiced for 10 or 15 minutes each day. Yet beyond meditation, reflection is also a vital tool. Journaling offers a way to weave together insights. Couples or individuals can write about a conflict and ask, what seed of karma is showing itself? What change of impermanence is being resisted? What attachment is asking to be released? When written on paper, these questions open a doorway into clarity. The fog of confusion lifts slowly and gently. Of course, practice is not easy. Emotions rise and pull the heart back into old patterns. Anger may surge, fear may cloud, doubt may whisper. Yet the teaching of Zen is to return again and again with patience. Each time one falls into clinging, one simply notices and begins anew. Just as the river keeps flowing, the lamp keeps glowing, and the garden keeps blooming. Practice continues without end. In this way, couples build resilience not through perfection, but through steady returning. Over time, this integrated practice begins to transform daily life. Conversations become softer because both partners recognize the seeds behind words. Disappointments become lighter because impermanence is honored. Attachments loosen because presence replaces control. The river, the lamp, and the garden cease to be distant symbols. They become living companions guiding each step in the shared path of love. Through this practice, marriage becomes not only a bond, but a field of awakening, where suffering is not denied, but held, where joy is not clung to, but savored, and where compassion is allowed to bloom naturally. At the close of this journey, we return once more to the crossroad, now no longer shrouded in heavy fog, but touched by light. The river flows steady and calm. The lamp burns warm and clear. The garden blossoms in quiet beauty. Their unity shines as a path for all who struggle in the delicate dance of love. The story has shown that separation leads to chaos, but integration leads to harmony. It has shown that karma, impermanence, and non-attachment are not distant concepts, but living truths, present in every moment of relationship. Reflection invites us to ask how these truths appear in our own lives. Where do we see the seeds of karma ripening in our words and actions? Where do we resist the natural flow of impermanence and hold on too tightly? Where do we confuse care with attachment and dim the light of love by demanding what cannot remain? When we pause to ask these questions, the teaching becomes real. It no longer belongs only to the story of river, lampy, and garden. It becomes the mirror of our own heart. Imagine for a moment walking the path of daily life with these three companions beside you. The river reminding you to act with awareness. The lamp reminding you to stay steady in change. The garden reminding you to love without clinging. In this vision, marriage or any close bond becomes a sacred field, not perfect, not without struggle, but filled with opportunity for awakening. The path of Zen is not found in distant temples alone. It is found in the kitchen, in the conversations, in the quiet moments before sleep. So let this story be more than words. Let it be an invitation to live differently each day, to soften in conflict, to listen in silence, to breathe when the river floods, to steady the flame when winds blow, to care for the soil without clinging to blossoms. This is how Zen enters life, not with force, but with gentleness, not with demand, but with openness, not with separation, but with unity. And if you feel a spark from these reflections, carry it forward. Share it with those you love. Let the practice of awareness, compassion, and release guide your steps. And if you wish for more moments of peace, more reminders of the gentle path, remember this simple call: a moment of peace is never far. Subscribe to Zen Buddhism and let these moments multiply in your life. May the river guide you. May the lamp light you. May the garden hold you. And may peace walk with you always. The long road of the traveler finally curved into a clearing where a house of light stood waiting, warm and gentle in its glow. The air around it held a stillness that spoke of home. Though the path had been filled with rivers, fog, and crossroads, now there was a resting place. The traveler paused to breathe, and in that pause, the echoes of every lesson gathered together like companions arriving at the door. The river, the lamp, and the garden seemed to merge into one vision, and the traveler understood that this was the house built not of wood or stone, but of wisdom carried through experience. Inside the house, each corner shone softly as if touched by memory. The walls seemed to whisper of impermanence, reminding that no storm had lasted forever. The windows opened to the garden of compassion, where non-attachment had allowed blossoms to return again and again, and the floors were steady as the flow of karma, showing that each step taken had shaped the foundation of this shelter. The house was not simply a place, it was the embodiment of the entire journey. Every trial, every sorrow, every small victory became part of its light. Yet even as comfort filled the heart, the traveler knew that the true challenge was not only in reaching this place, but in carrying its warmth into the days ahead. Life outside the house would still bring arguments, misunderstandings, and loss. The world would still ask for patience when trust is shaken, and tenderness when disappointment appears. The light of the house could fade if it was not tended carefully, just as love and marriage can dim without daily attention and care. The challenge now was not only to understand, but to embody the lessons in every ordinary moment. The traveler sat by the lamp in the center of the room and remembered how easily light had been shaken in the past. When winds of doubt blew too hard, it had flickered almost to darkness. Yet now, the flame was steady because it was shielded by awareness and nourished by compassion. Here, the traveler saw clearly that applying Zen in marriage is not about avoiding storms, but about protecting the flame so it can guide both hearts through them. It is about recognizing that the river of karma keeps flowing and choosing again and again to walk gently beside it rather than against it. Looking at the garden through the window, the traveler saw blossoms rising from soil that once had been hardened by fear and resentment. Each flower was a reminder that letting go had made room for new life to grow. Forgiveness had softened the earth, understanding had watered the roots, and patience had given the blossoms time to unfold. The garden revealed that in long-term love, growth is always possible if one releases control and cares with openness. It showed that marriage, like soil, responds not to demand, but to tender presence. And so the house of light was not only a resting place, it was also a call to live with awareness each day, to remember the river and flow with responsibility, to tend the lamp with trust and patience, to care for the garden without clinging. The traveler felt gratitude not for reaching an end, but for finding a home within the journey itself. This was the beginning of a new chapter, where every step forward would be taken in the spirit of Zen. Every challenge would become part of the light, and every moment, shared in love, would reflect the warmth of this house. The traveler stood before the glowing house at the end of the long path, his hands still carrying a bag filled with memories, regrets, and burdens that had been with him since the first step of the journey. The house shone softly, like the moon in the night sky, calling him home. Yet he knew he could not walk through the door while still clinging to the weight of the past. So he sat by the threshold and began to open the bag piece by piece, looking at every failure not as shame, but as a teacher. Each mistake revealed a lesson of patience. Each disappointment showed a hidden seed of resilience, and each heartbreak whispered the truth that nothing was ever truly lost when wisdom was gained. As he reflected, he saw clearly that holding on to these old burdens had only kept his heart heavy. The more he tried to carry them, the less room there was for light. So he began to place each memory down on the earth with gratitude, bowing gently as if saying farewell to an old friend. He realized that letting go did not mean forgetting. Instead, it meant seeing that the past had already given him what it was meant to give, and now its role was complete. The house in front of him seemed to shine brighter as his hands grew lighter, and he knew that this act of release was not an end, but a doorway to true freedom. The traveler then rose with an ease he had not felt in many years. He looked once more at the path behind him, the storms he had walked through, the nights he had doubted himself, the times when fear clouded his vision, and he whispered a soft thank you to them all. Every step had carried him here. Every stumble had taught him to stand again, and every tear had washed a little more dust from his eyes. He felt a warmth in his chest, not from the house ahead, but from the quiet fire of acceptance burning gently within, a flame that told him he was ready. Finally, he stepped forward without the bag, his arms open to receive the light waiting inside. As the door opened, it did not feel like entering a new place, but like returning to something he had always known. The home was not outside, but inside his very being. Free of the heavy weight of the past, he was now spacious enough to welcome the present, and in that spaciousness was peace. The journey of farewell had become the beginning of living anew. And in this beginning, he understood that every ending is simply another form of grace. As the traveler stepped into the house of light, he paused and looked around. The walls shimmered, not with decoration, but with a quiet glow, a reflection of all the lessons gathered along the path. In that moment, he realized the journey itself had been a blessing, not because it was easy, but because it shaped the depth of his heart. Every trial was a mirror, showing him his own resilience. Every sorrow became a stream, washing away illusion. And every kindness met along the way had planted seeds of compassion that now blossomed within. The insight came gently, like dawn spreading across the horizon. The traveler saw that he was never walking alone. The presence of life itself had been walking with him, guiding him through storms and resting with him in silence. He understood that even the darkest moments were not punishments, but invitations to awaken. An awakening meant seeing the beauty hidden inside the cracks of experience, like light shining through broken branches to form patterns on the earth. He felt no regret now, only gratitude. With this awakening, his breath slowed, his body softened, and his mind opened like a window to the breeze. He realized that to live awake was not to seek perfection, but to embrace impermanence. Each moment was complete as it was, needing no correction, needing only presence. He felt the truth that the whole journey had been preparing him to live in this way, awake and tender, carrying peace like a lantern that could never be extinguished. From this place, he vowed silently that he would not return to forgetfulness. He would live each day as a continuation of the path, each word as an act of compassion, and each breath as a gift. The awakening was not a single moment, but a way of being, a soft stream flowing forever, carrying him into a life of freedom and care. The final teaching of the journey whispered itself into the traveler's heart as he rested in the glowing house. It said that the deepest suffering does not come from what happened, but from the grip of clinging. The past had been heavy, not because of its events, but because of the attachment to them, like a hand refusing to release a rope even when it burned. The tighter the grip, the deeper the wound, yet the moment the hand opens, release brings relief. And in that opening, there is wisdom. This wisdom showed him that freedom was never found by changing what had already passed. It was found by changing the relationship to it, to see the past as teacher instead of enemy, to meet sorrow with understanding instead of resistance, and to let memory be a seed of compassion rather than a chain of grief. Through this shift, the heart grows spacious, no longer confined by old walls, no longer echoing with fear, but alive with the light of acceptance. This is the Zen way, not erasing pain, but transforming it into insight. He reflected on how often human beings cling to yesterday, replaying words that cannot be unsaid, holding tight to images of what could have been, and fearing that letting go means losing part of themselves. But Zen reveals a softer truth. To release is not to lose. It is to rediscover who you truly are when you are not bound. To release is to uncover the freedom that was always there beneath the layers of attachment, the treasure hidden inside the mud. The traveler saw that every lesson converged here. Suffering comes from holding. Liberation comes from opening. The house of light was not a reward at the end, but a mirror of the freedom born from letting go. He felt that this was the final gift of the journey, to know that nothing outside could imprison him. Only his own grasping could, and in the same way, nothing outside could truly set him free. Only his own release could, and in that realization, he found peace. Thus, the last teaching of the path became the beginning of his new life. He knew that the world outside the house was still filled with change, with loss, with uncertainty, but inside his heart there was a steady flame. He could walk back into the world carrying this light, meeting each moment with openness, transforming every challenge into compassion, and allowing freedom to unfold like a lotus opening to the morning sun. This was the final lesson, and it was also the eternal one. The traveler soon understood that awakening was not an ending, but a practice, a living stream that needed care. So he asked himself how to keep the light alive in the days ahead. The answer came softly, through regular reflection and community, like water that remains fresh when it flows. The heart remains clear when nourished by consistent practice. He decided to write each week in a small journal, recording not only his struggles, but also his gratitude, seeing patterns that revealed where he was still clinging and where he was opening. This became a mirror, guiding him gently back to awareness. He also chose to join with others who walked the same path, sitting together in meditation, sharing silence, and offering words of support. In this circle, he found strength when his own motivation wavered, and joy when celebrating each small step of growth. Zen practice is never about isolation. It is about remembering that all beings are connected, that one person's peace becomes a ripple that touches many lives. And so practicing in community becomes both support and offering. Challenges, of course, arose. Some days the mind felt restless. Some weeks, the weight of responsibility seemed to pull him away. Yet he learned not to treat these moments as failures, but as reminders. The path is not about never stumbling. It is about standing up again, not with harshness, but with kindness. Each return to practice was like breathing after holding the breath too long, bringing relief and renewal. In this way, even struggle became teacher to keep the practice alive. He set simple rhythms. Each morning, a few minutes of mindful breathing. Each evening, a moment of reflection. Each week, a time of deeper meditation. And once a month, gathering with others. These small acts created a web of remembrance, a net that caught him gently whenever he began to drift into forgetfulness. He discovered that discipline was not rigid, but compassionate, a way of caring for the heart by giving it space to stay awake. Over time, the practice no longer felt like effort, but like nourishment. He began to see ordinary life as part of meditation, washing dishes with awareness, walking with the breath, listening to loved ones with full attention. The House of Light was no longer a place he visited, but a way he carried within. And in carrying it, he offered peace to others. This was the fruit of long-term practice, a life where awakening is not a memory, but a living reality. As the traveler reflected on the entire journey, he saw not only his own path, but the path of all who seek peace. The glowing house became an image of what every heart longs for, a home of stillness and light within. He realized that Zen in marriage and life is not about avoiding storms, but about carrying an anchor of presence through them. The House of Light is built moment by moment through kindness, patience, and letting go. It is the true home that no external change can destroy. He imagined how life could look when carried with Zen. Couples walking together, not in demand, but in mutual respect. Families sharing meals, not in rush, but in gratitude. Individuals meeting challenges not with fear, but with calm strength. This vision was not distant or idealized. It was possible in every home, in every heart. If the practice of awareness was embraced, the traveler knew that this was the invitation of his story, not just to inspire, but to call forth action. So he spoke with clarity. Begin tonight. Do not wait for the perfect time. Simply breathe and let go of what you carry too heavily. Write down what you wish to release and offer it to the silence. Sit with your partner or your friend in stillness for a few minutes and feel the shared presence. Open a journal tomorrow and write with honesty. These small steps open doors. Each action, a brick in the home of peace you are building within. And from that home, you can live with more freedom and love. He then offered a blessing. May you find peace in your own heart tonight. May you walk your path with gentle courage, and may the light you discover spread quietly to those around you. For in sharing your peace, you multiply it. The traveler smiled, knowing that his story was not the end, but a thread woven into many lives, each listener continuing the journey in their own way, each one building a house of light in the world. Finally, he gave a simple call. Find peace in your heart tonight. Subscribe to Zen Buddhism to receive more gentle stories, and let this community be part of your practice. In walking together, the path becomes lighter, and in sharing light, the darkness recedes. The story closes, but the practice continues, and the journey of awakening becomes the journey of your own life.